sets another picture of the victorious life. Jesus on Calvary. The biblical image of the victorious life reads more like the victorious limp. Jesus was victorious not because he never flinched, talked back, or questioned, but having flinched, talked back, and questioned, he remained faithful. What makes authentic disciples is not visions, ecstasies, biblical mastery of chapter and verse, or spectacular success in the ministry, but a capacity for faithfulness. Buffeted by the fickle winds of failure, battered by their own unruly emotions, and bruised by rejection and ridicule, authentic disciples may have stumbled and frequently fallen, endured lapses and relapses, gotten handcuffed to the flesh pots, and wandered into a far country. Yet they kept coming back to Jesus. After life has lined their faces a little, many followers of Jesus come into a coherent sense of themselves for the first time. When they modestly claim, "I am still a ragamuffin, but I'm different," they are right. Where sin abounded, grace has more abounded. The portrait of Peter, the rock who proved to be a sandpile, speaks to every ragamuffin across the generations. Lloyd Ogilvie notes, Peter had built his whole relationship with Jesus Christ on his assumed capacity to be adequate. That's why he took his denial of the Lord so hard. His strength, loyalty, and faithfulness were his self-generated assets of discipleship. The fallacy in Peter's mind was this: he believed his relationship was dependent on his consistency in producing the qualities he thought had earned him the Lord's approval. Many of us face the same problem. We project into the Lord our own measured standard of acceptance. Our whole understanding of him is based in a quid pro quo of bartered love. He will love us if we are good, moral, and diligent. But we have turned the tables. We try to live so that he will love us, rather than living because he has already loved us. During the supper of his love, Jesus turned and said to Peter, "I tell you solemnly, this very night, before the cock crows, you will have disowned me 3 times. Remember Peter's hollow boast? Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. Brimming with confidence, Peter relied on his own resources. But today these words are a song of praise to Peter. His restoration to grace proved to be such a recreation that his protest is no longer an empty boast, but a prophecy of God's unyielding truth. For Peter will die rather than betray his master, and he will forever remember his unfaithfulness as the moment of the triumph of grace and Christ's conquering love. A story. Virtuoso violinist Pinchas Zuckerman was giving a master class to a group of young artists who had come from the 4 corners of the world to the Aspen Music Festival. The auditorium was filled with their peers and distinguished teachers and performers. The atmosphere was electric. To each of the talented performers, Zuckerman offered friendly advice and encouragement, discussing their playing in detail and invariably picking up his own violin to demonstrate finer points of technique and interpretation. Finally came the turn of a young musician who performed brilliantly. When the applause subsided, Zuckerman complimented the artist, then walked over to his own violin, caressed it, tucked it under his chin, paused a long moment, and then, without playing a note or uttering a word, gently placed it back in its case. Once more the applause broke out, and this time it was deafening, in recognition of the master who could pay so gracious a compliment. After his triple denial, what future would have awaited Peter if he had had to depend on my patience, understanding, and compassion? Instead of a shrug, sneer, slap, or curse, Jesus responded with the subtlest and most gracious compliment imaginable. He named Peter the leader of the faith community and entrusted him with authority to preach the good news in the power of the Spirit. The limping Peter's betrayal of the Master, like so many of our own moral relapses and refusals of grace, was not a terminal failure, but the occasion for painful personal growth in fidelity. It is not unrealistic to presume that later Peter praised God for the servant girl in Caiaphas's courtyard who turned him into a sniveling coward. In this context, small wonder that Augustine would paraphrase the words of Paul, that for those who love God everything works unto good, even sin. At some point in each of our lives we were deeply touched by a profound encounter with Jesus Christ. It was a mountaintop experience, a moment of immense consolation. We were swept up in peace, joy, certitude, love. Quite simply, we were overcome. Our minds and hearts resonated with awe and wonder. We were deeply moved for a few hours, days, or weeks, and eventually returned to the routine occupations of our daily existence. We did not get unraveled. Slowly we got caught up in the demands of ministry or career and the distractions our busy world offers. We began to treat Jesus like the old friend from Brooklyn whom we dearly loved in years past, but have gradually lost track of. Of course, it was unintentional. We simply allowed circumstances to drive us apart. On a recent visit to that city, it never crossed our mind to contact him. We had become preoccupied with something else, even though it was far less life-giving and captivating. It is possible we may never love anyone as much as we loved him, but even the memory has grown dim. Heightened by the agnosticism of inattention, the lack of personal discipline over media bombardment, mind control, sterile conversation, private prayer, and the subjugation of the senses, the presence of Jesus grows more and more remote. Just as the failure to be attentive dissolves confidence and communion in a human relationship, so inattention to the holy unravels the fabric of the divine relationship. Thorns and thistles choke the unused path. A verdant heart becomes a devastated vineyard. As we periodically close off God to our consciousness by looking the other way, our hearts are chilled. Christian agnostics don't deny a personal God. They display their unbelief by ignoring the sacred. The paltriness of our lives is mute testimony to the shabby furniture of our souls. And so our days become more and more trivial. We get caught in a hectic maze, rising when the clock determines, battered by news headlines that seem remote and beyond our reach, jangled by all the mechanical operations that launch us into activity and productivity, tested by traffic, forced to calculate time and distance to the second. Elevators and phones and gadgets guide us through necessary interactions and keep human interactions superficial and at a minimum. Our concentration is interspersed by meetings and small crises. At the end of the day, we rewind ourselves. Traffic, automation, headlines, until we set that alarm clock to dictate tomorrow's awakening. Routines of ticking and timing. Little room